Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. Frederick Osmond. As the President of the Teachers Guild of New South Wales, I'm pleased to welcome you here at the Concord Golf Club to our professional learning event on STEAM projects, literacy, communication and experiential learning workshop. The Teachers Guild of New South Wales is a professional organisation that has been in existence since 1892 and has council made up of educators across all systems of education and continues to evolve and grow to ensure our core values as the care of education. Today, the Guild promotes a long-established theme of deep interest in the professional development and encouragement of educators, providing opportunities for educators of professional to network, refine skills and receive recognition. For more details regarding the future events for the Teachers Guild New South Wales, please refer to our website. Our distinguished presenter today, Kerry Furs, is a Family Book Forum founder, publisher, author and presenter. Family Book Forum was created as an affordable resource for teachers to personalise and enrich lessons by scaffolding students to collaborate with their family, peers and community in emotional communication projects to develop academic and emotional intelligence skills. Family Book Forum originated in Australia and is being used in schools around the world. It is integrated with Google Classroom, available on Chromebooks and on any device connected to Wi-Fi. Teachers and students have been awarded for projects and case studies are in demand for thought leadership and conferences globally. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kerry Furs.
Thank you so much, Fred, and thank you to the Guild for hosting at this beautiful venue of Concord Golf Club. It's always lovely here. So, STEAM writing projects. I want to do an overview of the technology and explain how this could be a valuable resource for teachers and students in existing writing assignments, because this adds the component of STEAM, and I'll explain how you as a teacher could assign this technology for various writing assignments that you're already doing. So the schedule tonight is about 45 minutes or so. I'll do this overview, a few slides, and we will then be able to do an interactive activity where you can contribute content to a collaborative class book. You don't have to do it. I'm not going to force you. I'm not a mean teacher, but this is gives you a demonstration of how you as a teacher could send a link to a class of your students, and they can automatically contribute content, and it collates it automatically into a published book. It's a digital book and a PDF, and then you can also see through doing this engagement with this technology tonight how students would use it themselves and how they could autonomously at home or on any device or in the community use this for STEAM writing projects as well. So then after a bit of a break, we're going to rearrange things, and I'll show you some case studies of how schools have been using this technology for various projects and various subjects, whether it's history or English or technology, social studies, and how they have integrated this tech into their existing units. And we'll do a bit of role-playing if you want to. And we can practice the speech to text. So you can see how students would go out into their communities and families and use this technology as a tool. Then we'll see how we're going for time and how noisy it gets with people coming for the rugby, and we can answer questions, but you're welcome to just shout out questions at any time. So education, you know, it's had many changes, especially lately, and there's many problems and developments with education. And one of some of the major issues are like, how do you motivate students to be interested in your lessons? You know, even if you're a very experienced teacher, you know, you have great pedagogy, you know, you're still going to get students that are disengaged and troublesome in your classes, whether it's online learning, blended learning, remote learning, or in-class learning. So how do you motivate students to be interested in your lessons? And then how do you personalise and differentiate for a very diverse range of kids in your classroom. Maybe not so much at Abbottsley, where all the girls are lovely and perfect, but some schools there's huge diversity within a class of students, whether they're its abilities or whether they've got challenges, and even cultural differences, language problems. So, it's how do you personalise and augment these lessons for this diverse range of kids in a class. And also the reward. Why do children even care? What is in it for them? So we'll cover how my technology can help with all of these. So what is Bookform, Family Bookform? It's an online dashboard to scaffold and document students' STEAM writing or qualitative research projects into published books funded by communities. So qualitative research, we know, it involves collecting and analysing non-numerical data. So that's more around text and images and audio. And this is to understand real-world concepts, what's in their environment, opinions, experiences, perspectives, and this is a great way for students to gather in-depth insight into problems, maybe issues in their community, gather awareness of and develop their worldview, and generate ideas for thought leadership and maybe further research, depending on the age of the students. So we developed this technology adhering to these main education theories and frameworks. So UDL, are people familiar with the Universal Design Learning theories of the why, what, how of learning? And so this is how we would personalise and differentiate, and it gives students options of how they collect content, how they analyse and engage with that content, and how they present that content. So we've covered that in how we've designed this technology. And SAMR, SAMR framework, things like Google Docs and Word doc has been defined as just substitution for pen and paper. There's no real great learning going on. They're just substituting one tool for another. So I'll show you how the Family Bookform dashboard is more than just substitution. It's more than just a writing tool. It's scaffolding inquiry learning. It's scaffolding students to go out and engage with the community, collect content that's personal and emotional. And so with that, it gets the motivation and the engagement for them to be interested, and then that generates transformational learning. So down on the left, there's the ISTE or ACARA requirements for literacy and technology integration into education. So you can see that there's all these requirements around students being good digital citizens, being knowledge creators, and being computational thinkers, creative communicators, global collaborators. And so we've made sure that we're addressing all of these requirements with this technology. And the pedagogy is aligning to the STEAM or STEM and project-based learning type of pedagogy. So STEM we all know is education that integrates science, technology, engineering and maths, and the pedagogy of student-centred learning, in which students investigate and engineer solutions to problems and construct evidence-based explanations of real-world phenomena. So that's what these projects are trying to get students to go and get primary source data. So then you're in your lessons, you're teaching the importance of primary source. Then they're learning about where information comes from, what is true, what is false, how do you determine that, and it's evidence-based explanations of real-world phenomena. So if they're going into their communities, and this is a first example of qualitative research. So we can do it in stages where they first are doing it within their family and sharing in the classroom, and then going out into the communities as they mature. So STEAM is adding the arts or the humanities, and this is to include a human relevant perspective while developing the 4 C's of critical thinking, communication, collaboration and creativity. And so qualitative research fits really nicely into this STEAM pedagogy because it is student-centred, it's inquiry learning, it's generating real-world primary source information that the student can then enrich the lesson with the content that they're generating. And they can see the purpose of it because I'll show you some of the projects that they've done. So, you know, for 100 years, it's been teachers delivering existing content, whether that's through curriculum-aligned textbooks, videos, existing content, maybe it's digitised content now. Yes, of course, there's a certain amount of content that does have to be delivered, but, you know, from now on, we're sort of evolving where students are inundated with content. So it's not solely important to be delivering content all the time. Now we have to be teaching students how to synthesize that content, how to determine the value and truth of that content, like where is it, you know, what's the viability of this content. So it's more around analysis of content and you know, filtering it properly. So now this is where students become creators and teachers are more facilitators. So they're facilitating ways of collecting content, synthesising content, and discerning what is the difference and what is true, what is false, things like this. So in writing technology, you know, like I said before, with Word docs and slides, for example, it's typically a blank page. And so with a blank page, there's no real writing help. Teachers need to spend a lot of time with explaining and teaching where to start, what to write, maybe some prompts to get the kids thinking about topics that they can write about. Maybe they've got to read a textbook and then write a report on it. But, you know, it's like you've got to do a lot of teaching of skills of how to write, where to start, how to structure, how to link, all of these things. So on a blank page, there's no writing help. There's no differentiation, although Google is incorporating a bit of speech to text nowadays. There is a lot more functionality around giving a bit of differentiation of how you can input content into the page, especially good for dyslexic, you know, kids and kids that are very verbal. Then they have the other options now. But the motivation on a blank page, there's not much motivation. If you've given them a textbook, you know, why do they care about that text? You know, Shakespeare, that's so old, it's so boring, you know, what is he even saying? So, you know, some kids need a lot more motivation than others. So with a blank page, it's difficult to do that. It's not a published work. It's not a way to showcase their work. So with the family book form template page, there's, it's sort of like a video game. You know, the kids don't need any explanation or teaching on how to play a video game because, you know, all the scaffolding and explanation is within that dashboard. It's intuitive. They're interested because it's fun. They're getting a pot of gold. They're shooting somebody. So. But with video games, it's more around the motivation of dopamine and adrenaline that has been the triggers to get kids engaged. So with the family book technology, it's the motivation is more around personal relationship motivational connections. So that's to have oxytocin released in the brain. So that's a totally different chemical, totally different results and for motivating students. And so they don't understand that that's what's happening when they're doing these activities of interviewing grandma or grandpa or going and interviewing people out and about. But the oxytocin is what develops relationships and trust and bonding. And so getting kids, you know, from as early as we can to do these activities of communicating and talking, but it's communication for connection that is the vital point. It's not just writing something and blasting it out, which is what social media is all about. It's not a one-way street for communication, it's communication for connection. So it's getting kids to know what questions to ask, because the template pages have question prompts, and I'll show you the technology in a moment. But it's got the scaffolding there to give kids a little bit of a helping hand on what to ask, because we're finding now that kids are not talking. They don't even want to talk on the phone anymore. It's all about texting, because they're losing their ability to talk. And so if we don't scaffold projects to get them to practice talking, practice the interview process, we don't want them going into job interviews and it's the first time they've ever had an experience of an interview, the first time they've had to actively listen to a question and think about questions and answers. So this is scaffolding to structure that interview process, get them communicating and talking, so oxytocin is released and they're bonding. And the books are of value because the families really love maybe the family recipe book that they're getting at the end of it all, or the poems book that the kids have created, or they've gone and interviewed people in the community and created business, the shops of this high street, and how COVID has affected them, or things like that. It's various, it's a valuable product to the wider community, not just the people in the classroom. So now I'm going to go to the website. So first of all, I was just going to do a quick overview of the technology, and then we can do the interactive activity of you can contribute content if you want, or I can show you how it works. So okay, so this is the website, familybookform.com. So we're a Google partner, so that means that we've been vetted, and so we comply with all the student privacy and student data storage. So we use AWS for storage, so we guarantee that the student's data is private, encrypted, and it's stored on local servers. It doesn't go to any other country. So we're also a student privacy pledge signatory, so we comply with all that data storage. So if you scroll down a little bit, there's some example of book projects here. And so maybe for the younger kids, this would be something that would be more relevant to them. This was a Mother's Day project where the teacher was doing a STEAM research that she presented in Canada and Australia. So she sent the link to the class of kids, and they opened up a template page, and that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. And so as the student opened their template page, they could, this was before COVID, but they could work at home, and it was a project they did over 6 weeks. But as they submitted their contribution, it automatically got collated into the chapters and into their book. So the principal did an introduction, and then the teacher documented the STEAM project, and she documented the kids as they were doing the artwork. So they were to paint a picture of their mother or take a photo and write a poem. And as they made the contribution, it just automatically formatted into this book. So this is just a nice little this is the most basic version or basic use of the technology, is to automatically collect students' content. But the fact is that it can be a nice little brochure for the school, because the teacher can add a chapter, the principal added a chapter. And so it can be a nice little product that's included in newsletters or on the website, and it can be sent to families, and they can see, what you're doing with the kids. So it's a fun little thing. They had a fair day where the mothers came and they presented the books to the mothers and the families, and it was a nice little thing. But that's something that can be done to celebrate anything, whether it's Australia Day has been a good project that they did, because you're asking kids, what does Australia Day mean to you or your family? And so the kids can go and talk to their families, what does Australia Day mean to us? And whether it's a poem or whether it's just a little story about, you're collecting that information and it's collated into a book. So it's a nice little celebration, whether it's Grandparents' Day, Father's Day, or something like that. So another good example of that collaborative book, and I'll speak more about it a bit later on, but I'll just show quickly here. These were Blakehurst High School. They, for year 7s, they were locked down. They were the first year 7s to be in a lockdown. And so the teacher sent a link out to the students, and they were all locked down at home, and so they could contribute how was COVID affecting them and their family. So this, the teachers also contributed content, the principal contributed, and as they made their contribution, it just got collated there like the other book. And so, but this was really great because it was an opportunity for the kids to see how the teachers had been affected and how the school had been affected. And it was a great way to sort of engage the families and have everybody understand how each person had been affected, and teachers could identify what kids were struggling and maybe needed more help, and most of the kids said they were really enjoying the sleep-ins, and there wasn't too much trauma with these kids, so they were all right. And they were taking photos of empty streets and trains and their workstations at home. So it's just a nice little thing that they can do there. So there's lesson plans, there's tutorials, there's how it works videos, and case studies here on the website. So this is, ideally a hub that you could go to, and the school resources here. This is where there's explainer videos, and it's also some TV media that we generated, and I'll show you that in the case studies in the second half. So here I'll show you. Teachers can sign up for free, and you can access one free digital book. You can create a free digital book and try the technology. So I'm just going to, which one shall I use? So this is the dashboard that is the book creating dashboard. This is what you can use to invite students to contribute to your class book. There's a free one that you can create, and you can invite up to 200 people to contribute to your book, but I recommend that you don't invite that many because the page limit is 300, so if people are contributing more than a page, then it goes over. But this is a great way to test the technology, see how it works, and see what students would use for them to go and do a research project or go and interview people in their communities. So the scaffolding here has got the book cover. So the idea is that there's a question or a prompt, and they just answer below. And so this is the title of the book, the author, and you can upload a photo to the front page. So for the introduction, you can copy and paste, you can type directly in there, or you can speak into the page. And so this is part of the differentiation, so you can choose a language, and there's up to 200 odd languages. So this is great for ideally it was created for when students are interviewing people that speak another language. So this is projects where they may be doing qualitative research on migrant populations in the community, or going and talking to people, maybe grandparents speak a different language in some of these diverse multicultural families now. So they can choose whatever language, they can start and stop recording, and they go back and it's turned blue, and so then they can import the text directly into there. So just click insert. So this is trying to automate what is usually quite tedious. How to write. Where do you start? What do you say? So you just follow the prompt. And on the left-hand side is the scaffolding of chapters. So I've changed the titles all here for this example because this is the STEAM book that we're going to be creating. So I've already imported different content into these answer boxes. But typically, these chapters are all have got topics underneath them. So if you click on early years, for example, it has all these topics down the left-hand side. So this is where you could give students opportunity for agency and personalisation. So you can say maybe choose 3 topics or choose 5 topics this week, and the kids would just go through and choose these topics, and each topic propagates a different lot of questions. And so there's questions that they can, either they're speaking themselves or they're interviewing someone or they're inviting people to contribute, like I'm going to be inviting you to contribute to the book. So there's a few different options for collecting content and what they're collecting content on. So they can also upload some photos here. So this is just the scaffolding to prompt them of what to ask, and it's automatically collated. So up here are the collaborations. You can add or view contributors. So this is where I've inputted the people that were going to be at the workshop, and I can invite whoever, if you wanted to contribute some content. You haven't got laptops, so maybe it's harder. But I can invite you after the class if you like, and you can contribute content on what STEAM projects you've done at the school. And so once people have submitted their content, like Dr. Osmond has contributed, so you can see his content here. So this is, I have control to edit his content now. Once he's submitted his content, he can't change it anymore, but I have control. So in the classroom, if you ever invited kids to contribute poems and stories or whatever, then if they've done a spelling mistake or something's terrible, then you can edit it. And you can see what they've contributed and see what photos they've done, and you can edit and change them. This is, so you can arrange chapters, and you can view the digital book. So everything that's been inputted into the book creating dashboard is automatically propagated into this digital book. So this is what you can share online as a digital book for a year. You can email it, you can post it on social media and newsletters and things like that, and it's automatically propagated into the chapters and the contents and all of that. So I've inputted this content from STEAM projects that I've done and that I'm going to cover tonight. That was the Australia Day one. And so as people make their contributions, then it gets added to the book. So if you wanted to contribute content, it just gets added to the book. And so that automatically collates everything into that. So this is when a student is interviewing. Ideally, we start with the family, but it also works on any device as well. So if the students are out in the community, this is what they would do on a smartphone, and so they can get into their dashboard on the smartphone and just be recording and not have to worry about navigating too much. They just collect the content, take the photos, and then back at because it's all saved into the cloud, once they're back in their desktop, that's when they can import the text, they can start formatting, they can upload photos and so I'm asking the question. So, Grandpa...
Yes, dearie.
You're not going to put on a funny accent, are you? Because then it'll make the technology not work.
That's fine.
How did you get to school when you were a teenager? Hang on, let me start it. Go.
Actually, that was a rather long time ago, and it's hard to remember. But we lived in the country, and we had to walk a mile to the bus stop. And it was a rocky, stony kind of road that was not easy to traverse. It was a long way at that time, because I was only 5 years old. And then we caught a bus, which was probably another 20 k's to the school.
Wow. Okay, so then we stop. So there we go. We can start again. Like this is where you're teaching in your lesson interview skills, ideally. And so it's trying to get kids to make sure that they ask a question and then they stop talking. You know, they're actively listening, because this is when they have to think about what is the next question they're going to ask. I just have to plug in. I've used up all my juice. Thank you. So this is where, kids need to know where the microphone is on the device. If they're using a smartphone, it's a bit easier. But when we first had kids trialling the technology, the kid has got it here and they're talking into it, and then the person they're interviewing is way over there and nowhere near the microphone. So
Grandma's sleeping now. Sorry.
So there is a little bit of, how to use the technology. But within the dashboard, there's explainer videos as well. So similar to, the video games I was talking about before, having the scaffolding is like you don't have to be constantly explaining how the tech works. They can figure it out themselves. So this is where you could go back to the dashboard. There's a blue button there, and that's where the transcription is. So you can refresh it. I'm not sure how long it'll take because the internet seems to be quite slow here. It says it's still processing, right? So it might be quite slow. So this is why it's a bit slow. So if you go up to My Book and you view audio files, so this is where the recordings are all on the dashboard here. So you can see I did this recording and that's the text there. And this one, it's still processing because it hasn't appeared there. But this is ideal for when, students have been interviewing their older family members, for example. They can save those audio files and then they have them. So families always say that's really precious to have that. And I'll show a case study where the students went into aged care, and so those audio files of their elderly relatives were really vital to save. And so it's this is projects that families always want to do and think that they'll do it, and then time goes by. So the audio files are always within the dashboard, so they don't get lost. And if we go back. We'll see if it's finished processing. So then we insert it. How accurate is it? Restart it. I don't know how to remember. We lived in the country. So depending on the accent, depending on how well close the recording is and the Wi-Fi speed and all that sort of carry on, there is a certain amount of editing that has to be done. So this can be what you do within your lesson, is that they do have to read it, reread it, edit it, check the spelling,
it's good practice.
Punctuate.
If it was all done perfect, they wouldn't be practicing.
That's right.
The draft copy and then,
exactly.
Proofreading.
Yeah. So that's enough. Do you want to try the Italian and see if it's accurate?
Can do, but I'll speak Sicilian before Italian. So we'll see how the dialect goes.
Oh, you'll probably struggle with that.
I'm not sure. I can give it a shot if you
The Italian.
Yeah.
What dialect is it?
Sicilian.
Oh, Sicilian. Let's see if it's in here.
Probably not. It'll go to Italian. I can speak it reasonably well still.
It's only got one Italian there.
Yep.
But is it the dialogue? Is it more the accent or the actual
the words?
Some of the
words, yeah.
I can speak some Italian.
That'd be a good test to see, huh?
Well, because like in the Spanish, there's like 12 different accents of Spanish,
It's the United States version of Spanish.
Yeah, that's right. And same with English, they've got the New Zealand accent, the Australian accent, Ireland, India, it's all the different accents.
And whatever my accent was, it picked it up.
It wasn't so bad.
So I can speak Greek if that helps you. And there's one Greek there.
Do you want to try?
So what do you want me to say? Like, you asked me the question in Greek because I don't know English, remember?
How did you get to school, Granny? In Greek. Chris.
What did you say? I just lift my hair out of my ears. I beg your pardon? I mean, the Greeks would say, "Dear."
This is not a good example of speaking Greek.
Okay.
So,
Ask me in English.
How did you get to school, Granny?
I never went to school, lovey. Never went to school.
I thought you were speaking Greek.
Oh!
Short memory span.
Oh no, I thought you didn't want me to. Okay,
Don't worry about it.
don't worry
You're
about
ruining
it.
my book.
Sorry, complicating it too much. Edit.
Okay, you're dismissed.
Okay.
You're dismissed. So I'll show the case studies that we've done,
Thank you.
and we can discuss those case studies. So thank you for your
No
participation.
problem.
Keep the weeds. Keep the weeds.
It makes me look so much more handsome.
Okay, a quick question about the role playing.
Yes.
How many, like with people sort of coming together from the different nationalities and families, have you seen your collaborative book be more essential for people who aren't sort of first speaking English, in their language?
Yeah,
Have you seen that yet?
absolutely. So it's been the projects have been phenomenal about interviewing migrants in the community, because it's not just about collecting the story. It's not just about the content. It's about the actual engagement. And so that's been what is the educational purpose has been fantastic. But it's also I sell licenses to businesses, and so I'll discuss that in my case studies. But businesses sponsor the book creating licenses, and they donate them to schools, and they donate them to historical societies or something like that, and donate it to communities for community engagement. And so it's not just students that go and interview people, so they get adults and in palliative care, for example, they've already got people interviewing people that are going to be passing away pretty soon, and so they're already documenting their lives as memoirs. But this technology just takes it a little bit further. They're saving the actual voice file and memoir, and ideally avatars in the future. This particular case study was the one that I showed you a little bit of, the Year 7 English, and this was specifically around the qualitative research and the historical record of being a Year 7 student in lockdown in a pandemic, once in 100 year sort of stuff. And so, the enrichment teacher was saying that these kids felt so much more engaged and so much more serious about writing well, because they knew it was going to be in a published book. They knew that generations in the future would be interested in this content because it is a historical record. And the school put the book in the library, and this is all part of how the emotional engagement of the kids, and how why they would be motivated to write properly and edit their work and be more committed to making sure that they're writing well.
I think what you could do is sell this as a journal for when they're starting school.
Yeah.
And they could be adding their school photos. They could be adding their rewards.
Yeah.
And something, an award that they got, whereas adding photos, adding reports,
Yeah.
journaling, because just think of the mums, they get all this stuff. It gets put aside, it gets squashed somewhere, and when you need it, you can't find it. And what a great gift that is, or just something that they can stay with the child from their beginning to the end, even if by moving schools.
They should do one every year.
Yeah. So do you know what I mean? It's My School Life book.
Yeah.
Different chapter. Yep.
Yeah.
So everything's soft copies now. You think about it. Photos, everything. Reports. So why can't you just transfer it into a book and you've got it?
Yeah.
Semester 1, and then I got an award for this. Swimming carnival photo, school photo.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you finish school and you've got this, and this is like unbelievable.
Yeah. So it's more of a personalised than a yearbook.
You can sell that as a journal, like it's a personal journal.
So that's one of the case studies that I've got here.
Yeah.
So this was that Mother's Day poem book that I showed before, and so this is incorporating, this teacher was an arts teacher, it was Bronwyn, and so her focus was more around the arts than the technology. So, but it's an example of you can be, as a teacher, collecting content from your class on anything. So it's up to you what you're wanting to ask them to contribute. So. We didn't do the contribution to the book, so you didn't see what the student would see. Like the template page, when you've invited someone to contribute to a book, they open a template page and they can see the instructions from you. Please contribute 200 words on, how COVID has affected you, or please contribute 600 words on your holiday experience and where you went, and so it automatically collates into the book. But it's sort of trying to take it to the next level. Yeah. So there is publishing and book creating technology. Yeah. So it needs to be more than that. It needs to be not just valuable to the kid and the kid is proud, but it's valuable to the extended family, it's valuable to the community. So if the student has created, like this one, the family recipe book, they either face-to-face or Zoom interview family members to get them to include and contribute their favourite recipe. But when it's about food, it's more emotional and it's around family and celebration. But it teaches that kid identity and why do we like pasta sauce and why does grandma cook that food all the time. It teaches them about the identity, and they can start interviewing family about where they came from. It's migration stories and things like that. But then all the family members that have contributed all want to buy the book. So this is where this technology is STEAM writing and qualitative research projects, but it's funded by communities. So this is a way that your students are creating a product of value that people want to buy. Mainly it's their family, or something like this, a family recipe book. But there's projects, there's lots of schools that do recipe books as a fundraiser. So, each class, the teacher can ask the 30 kids in a class to contribute to a class recipe book, and then that's something that's a nice giveaway to families. But the kids are motivated to do a good job and talk to their family and what is the family stories and the nice family photos, and that's a diversity and inclusion project, because it's celebrating different cultures and stuff, and that's a way to do it. The Global International Indian School in Singapore, this was a nice case study because they're Indians, but they're living in Singapore, and their parents are like CEOs of companies and things like that, but the main bulk of their family is still back in India. And so they did the family recipe book, and they could send a link to their families that were in different places in India, and they contributed the recipes. And so it was a very emotional project because food was very important to this community, and so that was a phenomenal project. And I even had people in the community saying, can we buy those Indian recipe books, because they were really interested in some of the food. So this is the journals that you were mentioning before. So this girl, she did a COVID, how her family was affected by COVID. So her grandparents were in Brisbane and Melbourne, and so she sent the link to them, and they contributed, how COVID had affected them. And so one of the family friends' sister had died of COVID, and so no one in the family knew about it. And so this was a way that they found out that their dear friend's sister had died, and so it was a way to get students or get a young person involved with what the consequences were of something, because sometimes kids can be a bit removed, like they don't understand really what's going on. So this was a good way for her to see her grandparents and adults as people and how were they being affected, because a lot of times, everyone's talking about, young people's mental health, and it's a big issue, but sometimes they don't really have the context, like they haven't had a lived experience to understand that COVID wasn't really that bad, and we have pandemics all the time. This isn't like once in a ever horrific event. Some countries have been affected badly, more than us. But this is a way for kids to engage in an authentic research and authentic, perspectives of what is going on with people, and it gets them out of their own heads and makes them realise that other people have got things going on. So my problems aren't actually really that bad because nothing really has happened. We're all right. So it's good for getting kids to have a bit of perspective and a bit of context about how life is. They're actually living quite a good life in quite a very privileged time in humanity, So, it's getting them to see other people's lived experiences. She won the book competition, so I have a monthly book competition that, and it's run globally, so kids can submit their books from anywhere. And it's different from a writing competition. This is about, what book they've created. And so a lot of the content in her book was not what she wrote. She got her grandparents and friends and stuff to contribute content. So it's not about the writing per se, but it can start to get them interested in writing because they've got content, and then that can be included in a lesson, whether it's literacy or history, and gets them engaged, gets them interested. So this was the boys in Champagnat College in Pagewood, and so they have lots of feeder schools coming into this college, and so it's a bit of a lower socioeconomic area, and so they found that the 50% of the kids were below average, below the minimum requirement in literacy. So they wanted to do an intervention program to bring them up to be required literacy ability, but also engage the families as well. And so most of the families weren't really that educated and didn't really value education either. And this school used to joke that the parents would drop kids off at grade 1 and pick them up in grade 12. So it's very disengaged community, disengaged families. And so, they did this project where there was English life writing, and there was a biography life writing unit. And so each kid could have they chose someone that they would interview, either a hero or a grandparent or someone. And so they had the agency to choose, and they could choose what questions and what topics, and they created these books. And so this director of learning at that school did published research on how this technology improved literacy and boys' engagement, and it was fantastic results. And so what the teachers were saying here was not only was the literacy improved, so that 100% of the kids in that cohort were all well above literacy at the end of this project, but they had 0 of those boys were going to the library and taking books out, and at the end all of those boys were going to the library, and they started an interest. And so what the teachers said, it wasn't not just the literacy, what it was their motivation, their interest, their engagement in learning. Because those teachers are very qualified, they had great pedagogy and great curriculum and lessons, but the kids were so disengaged and disruptive in the class, and you just have a couple of boisterous boys that are not interested, and it just disrupts the whole thing. Girls is another planet. But these boys were not engaged at all. So at the end of the project, it was a massive celebration. And so one great thing, this was where because it's quite culturally diverse, these groups, and so kids, grandparents spoke different languages, and so that limits the dialogue within the family. And so often kids, it's not that they're not interested in their grandparents, it's that they don't have the emotional maturity to know what to ask. And so the template questions scaffold that, and I'll show that in a second. But so these are the boys practicing the speech to text like we did. In the classroom, they have smart screens, smart boards, and so kids can project their book up on the smart board, and this is where they can play the audio file. So this is where kids are really super engaged because it's story sharing, and they're listening to one kid's grandparents migration story or career experience or something like that. So it's bringing authentic voices into the classroom for everyone to enjoy, because not all kids have grandparents now as well. Families are quite separated and split. So this is great enrichment and bringing authentic voice in, and then they can collaboratively edit that text, So we've got all, peer bonding and, story sharing. It's a nice activity.
I was going to say about the story sharing, I think that's a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
To actually just develop that culture within the actual classroom.
Absolutely.
So, the children know each other.
Yeah.
From a different perspective.
That's right.
By sharing that communication.
So we've yet to do more longitudinal studies on whether it affects bullying and what engagement and mentoring programs it can be fitted into as well and stuff like that. So this is the boys presenting their books to their families. So the school paid for the digital books to be printed, and then each boy spoke for a minute on how he'd been affected by the process and the project. And you've got the grandparents and parents all here crying and laughing, and it was hugely emotional. And also humans are hardwired to be remember and be interested through story sharing and through narrative. And so if they've got this emotional connection to story, then they're more likely to remember the lesson. It's great for vocabulary building, great for literacy, and reading and writing, and just generating all of that, because they're emotionally motivated. So this boy won the book competition, and so Harvey Norman donated a laptop, and so he got a laptop and an award, and he did a biography on his mother. So it was so great, because he thought he knew his mother, but he found out so many interesting things about when she was a child, and he goes, now he understands why she's so strict, because apparently the granddad was much worse. So it was, very emotional and funny. That's the teacher was awarded for that project and by the Minister of Education through the Guild. And then this is her presenting the research at the end, and that was published and that was presented through ISTE as well over in America. So very emotional projects. This one.
Has there been any longitudinal studies regarding when children use this product to build their resilience and confidence?
Not yet.
Okay, because I can see there's actually value in the product to actually bring that out.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of our kids, to build that resilience, that communication, that confidence.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really hard as a teacher to get them to express themselves.
That's right.
But sometimes when students work at their own pace, at their own levels, sometimes that could be some sort of merit as part of this work.
Well, there was an anecdotal experience, and it was part of this project here, where it was the King's School and Tangara girls, and they went into aged care nearby them, and so each student was matched with a resident, and they interviewed that resident over a term, and these kids were so awkward, they were nervous. They'd never spoken to an old person before. One girl couldn't talk at all, she couldn't look in your eyes, and she's everywhere, and she was just so insecure and unconfident, and I thought, oh my God, how is this going to go? But she ended up being on TV at the end because she developed so much, and it was just incredible to see the change from the beginning to the end. But they really needed that scaffolding of the template questions, because they didn't know where to start. They didn't know what to ask. And they didn't know, they didn't want to type fast enough or write fast enough, because the residents are talking and they can't do it. They can't listen and talk and record. So to have this dashboard where they could ask this question and then stop and listen, and it's recording, and then ask this question and it's stop, and then when they're back at home or in the classroom, then they can listen to the recording, edit it, move it around. And they get the facts right and things like that. So this is the start of the project where they're doing interviews. She's using a mobile phone to. This lady was reading love letters from her dead husband, and recording all that. This was a German man, and so he got to speak a bit of German, and so that was good. And it's really good cognitive activity for the residents, the old people as well, because, kids are asking them questions that maybe have never been asked, or these old people have not thought about this for a long time. And the kids really loved it because there's an adolescence chapter, and so they're asking questions about when this old person was their age, and they love that sort of stuff because it's just so weird, horse and cart sort of stuff. And so this was the books that the King's School created and presented. So this aged care business paid for the technology, paid the students to do the work. So it's a great way to get students to be able to monetize their time. And so it was a great celebration. This was covered by Channel 7 twice. We're on TV, and so that video is on the website. And so it's very emotional, it was an amazing project where everybody was engaged in the book presentation at the end. So this was really cool because the students didn't have to be really academic. They didn't have to be able to be great writers, because to create a 300-page book can be an effort for anyone. So they could send a link to their residents' grown children and grandchildren and whoever, and they contributed stories and photos into the book. So the student didn't have to do all the work. It was just the student did the technology side of it, and they felt really responsible that they were in charge of creating this legacy for this family. So they were super motivated to write well and do a good job and be interested. And so it wasn't just the residents' families that went to these presentation ceremonies, it was the students' families. And some of these King students, their families drove in from Orange to come to the ceremony because they said that their boy had been talking about this for the whole term, and they had to meet Jacko because their kid, loved Jacko. And so it's very emotional. So these are things that, these kids will never forget, They've been instrumental in creating a legacy for this family. So that was very emotional. So this is the book competition. And so teachers can sign up for free and create one free collaborative book. I'll show you very quickly the dashboard. Well, what is the time? I'll show you the dashboard and how you could sign up, how you could do a free book. Try it out. Tell me what you think. Otherwise, it's $10 for a book creating license, and that's online for a year. You've got the template questions, 2 hours speech to text, 200 people can contribute. Download the audio and PDF, print on demand. There's online support, lesson plans, and all that. So a teacher would sign up. You can use your Google sign-in or any email. And so you would land on your teacher dashboard. And so this is the project creating dashboard that only a teacher sees. The students don't see this. So when you first land here, there's 3 videos. And so there's a video explainer on how you would invite students to contribute to your collaborative book. There's how you would buy licenses, and then how you could assign that through Google Classroom. So as you create a project, you would add a project here, and then it generates this icon. And so whether you buy 1 license or 100 licenses, it generates one unique URL, and so that URL is what you share with your students. You can share that through Classroom or just any communication platform that you use with students. And as the students click on that link, they redeem their license, and so they land straight in the book creating dashboard. And so you get 1 free demo book that you can try, and this is the book creating dashboard that you saw before. So this is the left-hand side has got the scaffolding of building and where you would input content into the book. So this is the front page and the introduction that you saw before. You can speak an introduction or copy paste. And so the first prompt there is person 1. And so when they click on person 1, it drops down automatically 4 chapters. And so each of those chapters has questions and photos that they can input. So at the end of that section, the general section, then they would be able to upload photos, Tibor, and so they would go at the end of those questions there. So if you were wanting to use this for a collaborative class book, for example, and you're using this free demo book to invite students to create a Mother's Day book or a Father's Day book or a grandparents book, then you wouldn't need any of that scaffolding down the side. So you would just go to collaborations, add view contributors, and this is where you would invite a class of kids on a list, or you would invite them one by one. This is if students are inviting family members to contribute recipes, or how COVID has affected them, or how do you celebrate Australia Day? So they would enter their name and email and a message here. So this message is where you're specific about what you want the students to contribute to the book. So whether it's write a poem up to 200 words and draw a picture of your mother, or take a photo of your mother, or upload a recipe. This is where you're very specific, because on the template page that they sign into, it's got your instructions on the side there. So this is what the contributors page looks like. So if you're inviting students, this is what the student would see. They've got your instructions from you on the side there. Please contribute 200 words around how COVID's affected you. So students would type directly into here, upload some photos and submit, and that automatically zaps into your book. So you can see here, once you've sent the invitation to the students, then you can see who has contributed content and who hasn't. And so you can send them a reminder, you can view the contribution, and this is where you can edit their content and see their photos, and if any editing needs to be done, then you can do it there. And so this is where everything that whoever's contributed to the book is automatically collated, and so you can just click on View Digital Book, and everything that's been inputted into there and contributed is automatically formatted. So this is where it's not a design technology. There's technologies and for design specifically. So there's very limited design functionality, because we purposefully didn't want kids to be distracted with swiping fonts and changing colours and big headings and little, and so then the book is just all over the show. So there's pretty much no design functionality. They can move content around, move chapters around, but they can't change font. They can't, and so it's just automatically collated into a book with chapters and sections and stuff like that. In here, so person one, you can edit that and change that to Grandma Fran, for example. And so then this section is all on Grandma Fran, if that's how you wanted to create your book. And so you could be sitting with Grandma and recording her voice. You could be, if the whole book is on Grandma Fran, then you can be sending invites to Grandma Fran's children and relatives and friends and asking them to contribute stories about Grandma Fran. So then the whole book is about Grandma Fran, and it's a celebration of her life, and it's you have done that. Or you can, and so each chapter has got different topics, and so this is where students would just work their way through the topics. If something's not relevant, then they just skip it. But none of these questions appear in the book, only the answers that you've typed or spoken in. So whatever content is inputted, that's what appears in the book, none of the questions. So the questions are just a crutch, a prompt to help kids and to ask this question, then ask this question, and then it covers a whole lifetime, because kids just don't have the maturity or the knowledge to know what questions to ask. But as they get older, and if they're doing a qualitative research project in the community, and there's specific questions that they want to ask, then they can type that question in or speak it in, and they can just turn these questions off, and then each answer box is just blank, and they can put whatever they like in there. But the questions don't appear, so it doesn't really matter. So they can just work their way through there. And then the adolescence years. So this is the one that kids really like working in, because that's collecting content on when their grandma was their age now. And so it's really funny to hear about what an adolescent's life was 50, 60 years ago. And so there's also prompts up here in the hints and help. And so they can get writing hints and memory exercises. So this is where they can get a photo and then ask grandma about this photo. So they're inputting the photo, they're getting the story about the photo, and it's just building content into their book. So this is where teachers don't have to be standing over them and explaining and instructing the whole time. There's a certain amount of explanation and intuitiveness within the dashboard, so they can go and work autonomously and collaborate with whoever they want. And so there's a lot of agency, and they can do their own thing, ideally. So that's why I thought it's not so much for younger kids, because they need a little bit more hand-holding, but for older kids in teenage years, because it's teenagers that start disengaging from their family and going with their peer groups, and peers have more input and value on their developing their values and their communication and their worldview. So I'm trying to get them to do projects where they're engaging with their family and talking and collecting these real world experiences and putting life into context, which is emotional and important. So they can work through that, and then if they want to add a new person, maybe they're going to interview grandpa now, then they would just add a new person, and then that generates a whole propagates the all those chapters again, and so they can just work their way through that and rename that grandpa or something like that. So this is all the scaffolding for them to sort of follow the prompts into the content. They can move it around a little bit. They can invite people to contribute. They can instantly view the digital book. They can share that online. It's private until they share it. And so they can download the PDF. This is where they can change the language of the book. And as people make their contributions. So this is dynamic for that year that it's online. It's a dynamic book. So as you input content, it keeps on building and changing. And you can download all sorts of different versions of it. So whether it's different languages or whether, it's grandma's at the start and or then you move and then grandpa's at the start. You can do that sort of stuff. It's time?
No, I'm just signaling to Fred.
Terry, quick question. When you download the actual book, does it come in an Acrobat version or a PDF?
PDF.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So you could actually, before the year's up, you could obviously download various volumes of your book.
Yeah.
And obviously sort of put them in a particular folder or something like that,
Yeah.
so you can archive them.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's an easy software. Okay.
Yeah. So, a PDF is like you can print it on your printer at home if it's just like a Mother's Day book and it's just a fun little thing. It's nothing precious. Yes. But if it's grandma's memoir and it's 300 pages of her whole life, and then that's more precious. And so you can send that PDF to the local printer and have it hardbound and glossy paper, and it's a keepsake. A real memoir, of her life. So it creates a PDF, and it's up to you whether you print it or what you do with it. You include it in a portfolio, a digital portfolio.
Yeah, I was just thinking straight away if it's a PDF, if people have the PDF writer, for example, they can actually add animation, they can add more things to it as part of the book.
Yeah.
It's not like it's finished. So you could actually make some contributions or comments. So, it's sort of like an evolving.
Well, once things are digital, you can do whatever you like to them.
Yeah.
So this is the point. This is what I'm trying to ensure, that every family digitizes people's lives and their content, because once it's digital, it can be manipulated, hopefully for good, not for evil. But this is, if we don't get people, grandparents' lives documented, or people in the community's experiences documented, it's sort of like citizen journalism. This is authentic, this is real, primary source qualitative research. If we're not collecting it, then what is the fake news telling us and programming kids to believe? What is real? What's not real? If we're not engaged in doing it, then it just disappears. It didn't happen. If it's not documented, it didn't happen, you know? So we've got to get them engaged to be documenting it. And in the family, it's personal and emotional, so, you know, you can relate it to curriculum objectives, but it's also relevant when they get older, like it's, you know, university age group and doing community service, you know, they can go and be do this as a biography as a service in their community for old people, or maybe saving first responders stories, you know, and yeah, was it yesterday was First Responders Day or something? You know, why aren't kids interviewing first responders in their community and finding how was our first responders affected in our community? Who would know? Like, unless something hugely sensational disaster happens, you don't know. Like, it's very rare that you get the good stories or the triumphs. So this is what kids, you know, it's valuable and it's authentic. If they're going and collecting it, then it's really valuable to that community. So, yeah.
Anyone got any questions?
But yeah, as a Google partner, there's lots of opportunities to generate case studies and showcase it around the world. They're always asking me for, you know, different examples of how technology created transformational learning, or how did teachers incorporate into their classroom. So do projects and let me know about it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, very good evening to you all. On behalf of the Teachers Guild of New South Wales, it gives me great pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this event for all the guests who are assembled here. A special thank goes to our guest speaker this evening, Carrie, who boomed this function with her inspirational presentation on really it is such an amazing project. I've had the pleasure of knowing Carrie for a few years, and I must say she is so hardworking. She always challenges every opportunity for success, and I do believe she has a bright future ahead of her with her creation. It's so inspiring to us at all levels, from teaching to the students, to the community. Really, I wish her all the success with her creation. Please, anyone, feel free if you want to stay back and ask any more questions. I think we've pretty much asked them as we went along. And share your thoughts and your expressions with your interest with her project. Feedback's always good, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just before we end the evening, I just want to say thank you. Just a little gift.
Oh, thank you.
It's not wine, sorry.
Oh, damn it. Mwah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for coming.